In previous modules, we looked at how do we write to a file. And writing to a file is relatively easy inside Python if it's a text file. But how would we write binary data? Well, this is a little bit more complicated. Not a lot, though. And it's a matter of why would we need to do it. Typically, if we just have something simple, like let's say a string or a couple of numbers, a text file is fine for that. But as we get more and more complex types of data, now we want to start looking at what other things can we do? What other types of ways are we going to store this information? And we might look at doing it into a database or some other format like that. One common option is a binary file. To do this, we're going to need to do 4 separate steps, both for reading and writing to the file. First, we're going to need to import a special library. This library has kind of a funny name. It's called Pickle. Second, we're going to need to open our file either for reading or writing, and we need to open it in binary format. We'll show you how to do that. It's very simple. Then we're going to need to either read or write to the file, and then finally we're going to close the file. So 4 simple steps. Let's see how we're going to do that. I've created a simple phone book. This is a dictionary object. You might recognize it from previous modules. I'm going to go to my very first line, however, hit the enter key a couple times, say import, and I'm going to say pickle. You notice it gives me several things that I could possibly do. Pickle's the one I want. Now, to write to the file, it's going to be very simple. I need to first remember I've imported Pickle. Now I need to open my file. In this case, I'm going to open it for writing. So I'm going to say file out. This is going to be because it's an output file. It's going to equal open phone data.dat. The .dat extension is short for data. It doesn't have to be this. You could have put in PIC, short for pickle. You could have put nothing. We tend to like to use it, especially since I come from a Microsoft Windows background. We tend to use file extensions based upon what's this information going to do. Open takes 2 values. Remember the file name that we're going to open, and then the mode that we're going to open it in. And I'm going to choose write, and then a second one, B, for write binary. So that's pretty simple right there. Now typically, we'll use something like write in order to write data to our file. But we're not doing it as a text file, we're doing it as a binary file, and we need to take this complex data type that we have. And this is good because no matter what the complex data type is, as long as it knows about it, we can do it. This simplifies our life. So how am I going to do this? Well, I'm going to say Pickle, remember that's the library we imported, .dump, okay? So dump is a special command that it's given to us, a function that's written for us, that we're now going to send the contents to a file. How? Well, we're going to specify phone book. This is what we're writing, and then we're going to specify our file, file_out. And then I'll say fileout.close. If I save this and run it, notice that we just get a message saying that, hey, exiting the main function. What happened here? Well, if I go in Visual Studio Code and look in my file section, I'm going to select phone data.dat. You can say, wait a second, this is binary, uses unsupported text encoding. Are you sure? Yes, open anyways. Open as a text editor. And you're going to see a lot of like really weird stuff. And this is because it is binary data. It's encoded, okay? So this is more along how it gets stored internally. This is something that Python understands. It's not designed to be understandable by you and I. So if we look at these things, you can see the text for the names that we have, but there are blank characters and there's other characters in there that we may not understand. We don't want to edit this inside of Visual Studio Code or TextEdit or Notepad or anything like that. This can only be used by Python. So how do I get my data out of this? Well, that's pretty simple. I'm going to close this phone data.dat. I don't need this anymore. I have my file that I wrote to it. Let's do the file to read. So I'm going to create a new file. Now I'm going to copy and paste this just so I have the boiler code, but I'm going to remove all the contents of my main with the exception of the print exiting the main function. Okay, so remember I said there's always 4 steps for reading, 4 steps for writing. Well, we did the 4 steps for writing, now do the 4 steps for reading. And notice that the first thing I did was I imported Pickle. I had to keep that. That's the important step here. Next is I'm going to create a file and open it. So I'm going to say file in. Okay, so this is going to be my input file. Where am I getting data from? I'm going to specify open. This is phone data.dat. And I specify how am I going to open it? Well, I'm going to open for reading and binary. So notice this RB, reading binary. Well, what's my next thing I'm going to do? Well, I'm going to need to use Pickle again. So I had, remember, phone book. I'm going to call this a different variable name just to show you that you can. So I'm going to call this values equals pickle.load. And then what am I loading? Well, I'm going to specify the input file. So file in. And then I'm going to say file in dot close. Okay, so those are my 4 steps. Import Pickle, open my file for reading binary, use pickle.load, and then close my file. Nice and simple, easy peasy. Now that my file is closed, I can print values. Save my file. So when I ran it the first time, all it did was show that I was exiting the main function. Now, when I read in my data, I now have data that I can look at. And if you look at my original sample file, you'll notice that it has those 4 values with those 4 phone numbers associated with it. So in this case, we stored a dictionary object. I could have stored other objects as well. I could have stored a list or a tuple. I could have created a list of custom user-defined objects. Now, we're not looking at how to create user-defined objects at this point, so we're not going to worry about that. But we can actually create objects like those sequences and other types of data structures that are available to us. So it's kind of a nice thing that it gives us. We have this built in for us. It makes it work very easy to use binary data. Now, there is a potential problem though. Remember, the easier something is to use, one of 2 things, or maybe both, is going to occur. So, for example, some things are easy to use, but they're not really efficient, and they're slow. Now, Pickle you saw was pretty quick and efficient. That's not a big deal for us. Okay, that's great to know. What else is out there? Well, maybe it's not real secure. And this is a case with Pickle. So Pickle can actually load and actually run pieces of code by reading it from another file. Is that good? Maybe, maybe not. Yes, you could use this in a proper way, but it's not the best way. There's other ways to import data, like using the import command. So why would that be a problem? Well, if you don't know where your data came from, and you just got a piece of data and said, oh, here, try this. Well, you might go and try it and find out that it breaks your system. It crashes it, maybe deletes files, etc. So you have to, if you're going to use Pickle, trust your data source. Now, there are other things that you can do. For example, there are other libraries you can import that are a little bit more difficult to use, but give you a little bit more secure data. Maybe that's what you want to do. Maybe you only are going to run data from sources you trust, in which case Pickle will work fine. You have to kind of weigh the pros and cons with any module that you're going to use and anything you're going to do to determine what's the best thing for me. In this case, this gives you an example just to show you an easy way to store complex data that doesn't require any parsing or any development work on your end if you're willing to work with those limitations.